You are covered in grease, your hands deep in the manifold of a commercial fishing trawler docked in Bandar Abbas, earning a predictable, legal wage that barely feeds you. You are 31 years old, a marine mechanic with a spotless record, spending your days diagnosing diesel knocks and your nights sleeping in a small, sweltering apartment. Then the local syndicate men arrive at the shipyard, bypassing the foreman to pull you off the deck. They drag you to the back of a black SUV and show you a video on a cracked smartphone. It is your younger brother, beaten and kneeling in a warehouse, weeping. He lost $80,000 of the syndicate's money in a botched crypto laundering scheme, a debt that belongs to your bloodline now. The enforcer in the passenger seat turns off the screen and hands you a set of keys, a satellite phone, and a GPS unit with a single waypoint saved. You have two choices: let your brother die tonight and go to debtor's prison tomorrow, or pilot a heavily modified fiberglass speedboat loaded with 8,000 liters of illicit diesel across the Strait of Hormuz to a waiting Omani buyer. You do not ask questions. You do not ask for time to think. You wipe the grease from your hands onto your overalls, take the keys, and walk toward the dark pier where a low-slung, unmarked skiff bobs in the black water. You leave your tools, your honest wages, and your previous life on the dock. You step onto the skiff and instantly feel the unstable, shifting weight of 8.5 metric tons of liquids sloshing beneath your feet. The deck is entirely taken up by massive, reinforced PVC bladders filled to bursting with subsidized Iranian diesel, bought on the mainland for pennies a liter and destined to be sold for dollars in the open waters of the Gulf. You start the four massive outboard engines. They roar to life, vibrating through the thin fiberglass hull. You untie the mooring lines, push the throttle forward, and slip out into the pitch-black labyrinth of the Strait of Hormuz. You are no longer a mechanic. You are a ghost, a smuggler carrying a floating bomb, entirely responsible for paying off a debt with a cargo that will incinerate you if a stray spark hits the venting fumes.
The immediate danger of the strait requires absolute, unbroken concentration. You are navigating one of the most heavily militarized, hyper-surveilled maritime corridors on the planet. 20% of the world's oil flows through this narrow choke point, surrounded by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the United States Fifth Fleet, Emirati Coast Guards, and ruthless rival syndicates. You do not run with lights. You do not run with an automatic identification system transponder. You navigate strictly by the digital glow of your GPS and the silhouette of the mountains against the starlight. For the first 30 minutes, the operation is simply a matter of battling the physical physics of the overloaded skiff. Diesel has a specific gravity of roughly 0.85. The fluid inside the bladders shifts with every ocean swell, threatening to capsize the lightweight boat if you take a wave at the wrong angle. You must constantly adjust the trim of the outboard motors, reading the invisible contours of the water through the feedback in the steering wheel. The sudden flash of a searchlight cuts through the darkness 3 nautical miles to your port side. An Iranian Coast Guard fast attack craft is running a patrol pattern, sweeping the waters. A lesser pilot, terrified by the sudden illumination and the reality of a 10-year prison sentence, instantly slams the throttle forward to outrun the light. In that doomed shadow timeline, the sudden cavitation of the 4 propellers churning the water alerts the patrol's acoustic sensors. The searchlight snaps onto the skiff, blinding the pilot. A warning shot from a .50 caliber machine gun miscalculates in the heavy swell, the incendiary round piercing the forward PVC bladder. The spark ignites the fuel vapor instantly, creating a catastrophic thermobaric explosion that vaporizes the fiberglass hull, leaving nothing but a fading fireball and a slick of burning oil on the surface. You do not make this mistake. The moment the searchlight crests the horizon, you instantly kill all 4 engines. You drop the anchor to stabilize the pitch, forcing the skiff to sit dead in the water, riding low enough that the curvature of the ocean swells masks your profile. You crouch beneath the gunwales, ignoring the intense fumes of the venting bladders burning your eyes, and you wait in absolute agonizing silence. The searchlight sweeps over your position twice, hitting only the crests of the waves, before the patrol boat alters its heading and drones away into the night. You pull the anchor, restart the engines, and complete the delivery, transferring the fuel through high-pressure hoses to an unmarked dhow waiting at the GPS coordinates. You return to the Iranian coast with a duffel bag of US dollars. You pay your brother's ransom, but you realize immediately that the syndicate will not let a pilot with your mechanical skill and cold nerves walk away. You are locked in.
3 years pass, and your operations scale drastically. You are no longer freezing in an open skiff. You are now the captain of a 50-meter wooden dhow, heavily retrofitted below decks to carry 200,000 liters of illicit fuel per run. Your mechanical expertise has allowed you to modify the ship's internal architecture, hiding the massive fuel bladders behind false bulkheads designed to look like standard cargo holds filled with legal goods, watermelons, concrete powder, or automotive scrap. The stakes are no longer just your own life. You are responsible for a crew of 12 men, most of them desperate teenagers recruited from the impoverished borders of Sistan and Baluchistan. You pay them handsomely, effectively buying their silence and their lives, knowing that if the ship goes down, they go down with it. The economics of your operation govern every decision you make. You purchase the fuel for 5 cents a liter through a complex network of corrupt local officials and phantom trucking companies, and you sell it for 70 cents a liter to corrupt tankers loitering in the Gulf of Oman. A single successful run yields over $100,000 in pure profit, money that is immediately laundered through hawala brokers in Dubai and Muscat. But the increased scale brings compounded risk. You are not just avoiding patrols anymore. You are actively subverting military-grade radar networks. You learn the art of electronic warfare on a civilian budget. You purchase cloned AIS transponders, devices that broadcast a ship's identity, heading, and cargo to surrounding vessels and satellites. You spoof the identity of a legitimate Panamanian-flagged cargo vessel, calculating the exact timing required to turn the transponder on and off to match the expected patrol routes of the legitimate ship. You rely on strict mathematical discipline. If your transponder broadcasts a position that requires the ship to have traveled at 60 knots, an impossible speed for a wooden dhow, the anomaly will trigger automated alerts at the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. You are halfway through a massive run, pushing deep into the traffic separation scheme of the strait, surrounded by massive supertankers. The sea is rough, the swells pushing 3 meters. Suddenly, your chief engineer rushes onto the bridge, his face pale. The internal securing straps on the port side fuel bladder have snapped under the stress of the heavy sea. 2,000 liters of raw diesel have already spilled into the lower engine compartment, the fluid sloshing violently against the hot manifold of your primary diesel generator. A novice captain, clinging to the profit margin of the cargo, immediately orders the crew into the lower decks with buckets and pumps, desperately trying to save the fuel while keeping the generator running to maintain the ship's navigation lights and radar. In that fractured, doomed timeline, the crew wades into the enclosed space, overwhelmed by the toxic displaced oxygen. The heavy vapor pools at the bottom of the hull. One of the crew members, slipping on the wet steel, drops a portable halogen work light. The bulb shatters. The flash point is reached. A concussive shockwave blows the deck plates upward, severing the captain's legs on the bridge before the main bladders sympathetic detonate, sending a column of fire 200 feet into the air, drawing every military vessel in a 30-mile radius to recover the charred wreckage. You do not hesitate. You instantly throw the emergency breaker, killing the main generator and plunging the ship into total darkness. You order the crew to abandon the lower decks and seal the bulkheads, effectively sacrificing the engineering bay. You switch to battery-operated backup navigation, fully aware that you are now drifting blindly in a major shipping lane without running lights, a wooden speck in the path of steel behemoths moving at 20 knots. You deploy hand-cranked ventilation fans to slowly clear the vapor from the engine room, buying time while the mechanic bypasses the flooded section to manually restart the main propulsion engine from a secondary fuel line. It takes 45 agonizing minutes of drifting in the dark, listening to the terrifying low-frequency hum of a 300-meter supertanker passing less than half a mile off your bow, entirely unaware of your presence. Once the fumes are cleared, you restart the engines, cut your losses, and
and limp to the rendezvous point. You lose $20,000 in spilled cargo and repairs, but you keep your life, your ship, and your crew. You deduct the loss from your operating budget, adjust the security protocols for the cargo straps, and continue.
By your 5th year, you transition into the apex of maritime smuggling, ship-to-ship transfers of sanctioned crude oil. You no longer carry the fuel yourself. You are a ghost pilot, hired to board massive, aging oil tankers that have gone dark by disabling their transponders. Your job is to manually guide these blind leviathans alongside other dark ships in the deep waters off the Omani coast, transferring millions of barrels of crude under the cover of night. The physical mechanics of this operation are terrifying. You are dealing with 2 floating masses of steel, each weighing over 100,000 tons, trying to bring them within 3 meters of each other in open ocean swells without crushing the hulls and causing an ecological catastrophe that would bring international naval task forces down on your head. You stand on the bridge of an Aframax tanker, a rusted vessel with a dubious Togolese flag, communicating via encrypted radio with the captain of a receiving very large crude carrier, VLCC. The operation requires precise coordination of speed, heading, and wind resistance. You must calculate the exact compression of the massive pneumatic Yokohama fenders deployed between the ships. The wind picks up suddenly, shifting a severe cross breeze against the massive surface area of the VLCC's hull. The gap between the ships is closing too fast. An arrogant pilot trusts the electronic telemetry, trusting the digital readout that says the approach speed is within safe parameters, ordering a steady course. In that failed reality, the electronic sensors fail to account for the sudden hydraulic suction created between the 2 massive hulls as the water is displaced. The ships are drawn together with inescapable gravitational force. The metal tears upon impact, a deafening screech of ripping steel. A spark from the collision ignites the crude venting from the open manifolds. The resulting explosion rips the superstructure of the tanker apart, instantly incinerating the bridge crew and pouring 3 million gallons of burning oil into the sea, ensuring a spectacular death that will be seen on satellite imagery around the world.
You do not trust the screens. You watch the water between the hulls, measuring the compression of the waves with your naked eye. You feel the micro vibrations in the deck plating beneath your boots. Recognizing the trap of the hydraulic suction, you violently countermand the approach. You grab the radio and order the receiving ship to immediately kick its bow thrusters to starboard while you slam your own engines into full reverse. The massive diesel engines scream under the sudden load. The ships drift agonizingly close, the massive pneumatic fenders screaming as they are compressed to their absolute limits, the rubber burning against the steel hulls. For 10 seconds, you wait to be crushed. Then the reverse momentum catches. The ships slowly peel apart, stabilizing at a safe distance of 10 meters. You order the heavy mooring lines thrown, securing the vessels. You command the transfer hoses to be connected. Over the next 12 hours, 1 million barrels of crude oil move through the pipes, netting your syndicate millions of dollars and earning you a personal commission of $150,000 wired to an untraceable account in Cyprus. You survive the night, but the psychological toll is cumulative and permanent. You return to your lavish apartment in a coastal high-rise, far removed from the sweltering room you inhabited as a mechanic. You have wealth you never could have imagined in your previous life. Your brother is safe, managing legal businesses funded by your dirty money. You wear expensive watches and drive imported cars, but you are a prisoner of your own success. You cannot sleep without pharmaceutical help. Every time a helicopter flies over your building, your heart rate spikes, calculating whether your offshore accounts have been flagged by the Treasury Department or if a rival syndicate has sold your name to the Revolutionary Guard. You possess millions in digital numbers, but your physical reality is strictly bound by the tides, the phases of the moon, and the patrol schedules of the naval powers operating in the strait. You look out your window at the black expanse of the water, knowing that the syndicates will never let a pilot of your caliber retire. Tomorrow night, the moon will be new, the tide will be high. You will put on your boots, walk back down to the docks, and step onto the deck again, navigating the razor's edge between massive profit and total annihilation. The engines are waiting.